talk to the camera.
Hopefully we'll start in about 10 minutes, perfectly on time. If the link works for you guys, send me a little thumbs up on the thingy.
מה?
Now I'm getting a delay.
Wow. Our father, Aaron Tuvia Bar-Lev, was a study in contrast. He was a proud Sephardi Jew whose parents immigrated from Poland to the United States. He was a talented electrical engineer who switched careers to become the shamash of the oldest Jewish congregation in North America. He was a classic New York Jewish liberal and also a firm believer in flag and country. He was a lifelong American Boy Scout, yet fiercely proud of his 3 children and their families here in Israel. He was able to work for hours and days on end to finish a project, yet would fall asleep at the dinner table. He was always proud of his strength and vitality, much better at giving than at receiving. But in the end, he was ravished by disease and reduced to needing the care of others. Most of all, he was a loving husband, father, uncle, grandfather, and great-grandfather, whom all of us will miss. I want to share just a few stories about my dad. He was born in 1934 in New York City. When he reached first grade, his parents looked for a Jewish Sunday school. Fatefully, they chose the Polonese Talmud Torah School of Shearith, Israel. This started a lifelong love affair. As he grew up, he became more and more active, despite walking more than 2 miles, 3 kilometers, each direction every Shabbat. He constantly volunteered, doing everything from leading membership societies to helping with maintenance. By the time I was aware, he had outfitted the shul's auditorium with a state-of-the-art audio system with parts begged and borrowed from his day jobs. I still remember very well the year he was an Avelut for my grandmother Ruth. I had to run a sound system twice my size at some posh downtown hotel for the shul's annual fundraising dinner. Later, in the late 1970s, my father was laid off from his job at Philips. Facing a real shortage of engineering jobs in New York, the only sensible career choice would have been to relocate to California or to some other high-tech hub, uprooting us from family, friends, and school. Instead, he chose a different option: stay in New York, combining vocation with avocation. He accepted a full-time position at the shul and worked there for another 20 mostly happy years. Shearith Israel is an old congregation, founded in 1654 and very fixed in its ways, and with many of its own customs. One of the wonderful customs is that every Chatan Torah or Chatan Bereshit is invited back for the same honor every 25 years. On rare occasions, someone lived long enough or was first honored young enough that they got to be Chatan 3 times. My dad received this 3rd-time honor 5 years ago, after he had made Aliyah and after he was already starting to suffer from dementia. I had the honor and pleasure. Well, I made it halfway through. I had the honor and pleasure of flying with him to New York. It was amazing to watch the age and confusion drop from him as he rejoiced there. Meanwhile, Shearith Israel was not the only target of his urge to volunteer. He also joined the Boy Scouts as a young kid. He was an active scout for nearly 50 years, leading 3 troops, including Troop 613 at Ramaz, where my brother and I were both active. For many years, camping was his passion, and our family went camping at the start and end of every summer. He was also a skilled electrical engineer and an electrician, able to work at the abstract levels of calculus and Fourier transforms, as well as with the soldering iron on delicate connections. He began his career in aerospace, working on cameras that NASA had used for the early space missions. This became valuable at my parents' wedding in 1959. Their professional photographer messed up the film, but magical advanced technology was able to save one negative. So we have one picture, somewhat dark and blurry, of my parents under the chuppah. Later, he worked for many years at Philips, or as us kids love to try to pronounce, NV Philips Glolampenfabriken. He was a marketing engineer responsible for organizing many trade shows and exhibits. He traveled often and worked hard. He told the story of pulling all-nighters and going to sleep for 2 hours in the hotel bathtub so he could wake himself up with a blast of cold water. My parents had a wonderful 50 years together and functioned as a well-oiled team. My mom was responsible for getting us to places on time, my father for ensuring that we would somehow be late nonetheless. After we kids were out of the house, they took a cross-country vacation, driving from New York to California and flying back. They arranged a deal with a rental company to cheaply rent a car that needed to be on the other coast. Turns out that it was a limousine. Gleefully, my dad would put on a chauffeur's cap, and my mom would sit in the back seat as they pulled into Holiday Inns and Motel 6s across the country. They say the looks they got were incredible fun. Of course, they also managed to miss the Grand Canyon along the way, but that's a story for another time. 11 years ago, my mom passed away after 18 awful months fighting cancer. Taking care of her was my dad's final great effort. After that, he suffered several minor strokes, which led to his dementia. He finally gave up his apartment in New York and moved to Israel a few years later, living in Jerusalem, first with Mark and Barrett, and later in an apartment nearby. Even as his health got worse, he remained the same volunteer he has always been. He volunteered at the AACI, and the only way we were able to persuade him to spend time at Milabev, the old age center, was to promise him that he could help them organize things too. To the very end, he was bigger than life. He was always looking for ways to help others. In his honor, I'm going to conclude by breaking away from this hesped and to do something I think my rule-breaking father would have done. I'm going to put in a public service announcement. Dementia is an awful disease with many causes. One of them is mini-strokes, which are often triggered by what's called metabolic syndrome, basically increased blood pressure and sugar. We know now that one trigger for metabolic syndrome is sleep apnea, a very common disorder that causes interruptions to breathing while you sleep and daytime drowsiness. My father had sleep apnea, but this was only understood decades too late to help him. Today, this disease, sleep apnea, is very treatable. If you or anybody you know sleeps badly, snores badly, or is unusually drowsy, please get tested. The treatments are not wonderful, but they do work. If this message helps just one person avoid an old age, like the past few years my father suffered through, then I'm proud that I use this moment to spread the message. Hope he is proud of me too. Arnie Goldfarb, Dad, Aaron Tuvia Barlev, we love you and miss you.
I began writing this while we waited. Daddy, for as long as I can remember, we have always been waiting for you. You were always running late. And this time, well, as much as we've been expecting this for so long, I am so glad you kept us waiting. As hard as it was to watch you not be you for this whole horrible disease, you were still here, physically, and I'm just having such a hard time letting you go. Over the past week, I thought I saw the twinkle in your eyes, or a smile of recognition, though deep down I knew it was only my imagination. As much as I wanted it to be true, I prayed that it was not, and that you were not in any way aware of what was going on, and that you were already at peace. I repeatedly told you how much we loved you, what an amazing dad and Saba you have been, and that it was okay for you to go, that Mommy, Safta, was waiting for you. Again, I thought you heard. I imagined a flicker of recognition, and again, I prayed that you had not. While you laid in bed these past days asleep, I imagined that you were telling me things, what you wanted, what you felt, what you needed, that you were sharing with me what I should be doing, how I should be comforting the family now, as only you knew how to do. But I couldn't hear what you were saying. I wish I had, then I would know what to do. These past years have been a merry-go-round of emotions as we watched you disappear. But you were here with us, your 3 kids, our spouses, 11 grandkids and 5 great-grandkids, and you loved us all. Daddy, I often question whether we did the right thing bringing you to Israel. We couldn't leave you alone in New York, and we made you leave what was familiar to you. I wonder if this hastened the dementia. But then, I know how much you loved being here with us all, and how much we loved having you here, and I realize that I need to stop questioning the decision. We are so grateful for the wonderful and loving care that you received this past year and a half from Dafna and her amazing team at Beit HaShemesh in Ranana, and to Belev Shalem that guided us through this whole process, and to Nats and Milabev. We could not have done it without you all. When Mommy died during Sukkot 11 years ago, we couldn't give hespedim. So what I'm saying now is for both of you. It makes more sense that way. You were a team from start to finish that made us who we are. Thank you for instilling us with your values. We have brought up our families as you brought us up, and I hope we have made you proud. You taught us the importance of family, a sense of what is right and what is wrong, and how to lead our lives according to Jewish values and laws while keeping a balance of normalcy. Thank you for that. You taught us to volunteer, to give to the community. You were both incredible role models. Mommy, there's a blood drive named in your memory every year. Daddy, you did everything for SMP. It wasn't just a job for you, it was your life. And the Boy Scouts, Troop 613. My friends will never let me forget that you were their leader. And both of you did Avodat Kodesh as members of the Chevra Kadisha. And Daddy, you never left me or my friends stranded as you piled us into the back of the station wagon, time after time, shuttling us around the greater New York area. Our home was always open to anyone who needed a meal or a place to sleep. Daddy would bring home what we lovingly called the stray cats from the synagogue, and without missing a beat, Mommy would always have enough places and food at the table for all. There is so much more to say. How do you even start to sum up such an incredible life in a few minutes? Those of you who knew my dad, my parents, know how much I didn't say. I hope that my brothers and I, with our families, will continue their legacy through our lives. Lastly, I want to apologize, or rather say thank you, Daddy, Mommy, for letting us pursue our dream and make Aliyah. As a grandmother now, I cannot imagine how you let us take Daphna at just 4 months old and get on a plane and go so far away. How did you leave after each visit, not knowing when you would see us next? But you assured us we were doing the right thing, and for that I thank you and love you. Daddy, go be with Mommy. These past years have been so hard for you. Please, you deserve to rest now and be happy. We love you so, so much, and we'll never stop remembering you and loving you. I finished writing this as you took your last breath this morning, as you listened to Daniel Hafan's Chazanut from SMP, and your face relaxed, and you were at peace at last.
When I was very young, I can't remember exactly at what age, I woke up one night and heard some noises from downstairs. Someone was definitely taking a shower. I didn't give it much thought and went back to sleep. In the morning, we were asked to keep it quiet since we had a guest. Only when we got back home from school, we found out you came to visit us. You accompanied someone to be buried in Israel. That's the first time I learned how special you are. Not just to us, your family, but you were a man of chesed shel emet, a pillar to your congregation in Shearith, Israel, and a cornerstone to the Jewish community in the Upper West Side. Saba, we all used to crack up when you spontaneously let a bark out. It wasn't until you stopped a car in the middle of the street to pet a dog that we realized just how loving and caring you were, how funny and foolish you liked to be. You always loved a good knock-knock joke, a riddle, or wordplay. You always snuck that extra cookie and loved ice cream. I'm so happy that one of my last memories of you is you smiling. When I was 14, I got to go to the States all by myself. I stayed in the city for a couple of nights and had the chance to follow you around. I went to the synagogue in the morning, to the bank, and to your office in Midtown. I remember how serious you were, how proud you were. Your pride was such a positive attribute. And I was proud to be walking with you. You were so proud of your Spanish and Portuguese heritage, even though you were Polish. So proud of your family and your profession. Will always remember how you tried to teach me to run wires, and I'm grateful for allowing me to assist you while fixing our house electricity, and for trusting me not to tell Savta each and every time you were electrocuted. I'm so sorry we didn't visit as much as we should have this past year. I'm grateful for the opportunities we had in the last couple of weeks, for the last 10 years of you living in the same time zone as us. Saba, on behalf of us all, thank you for 33 years of being the best Saba in the world, for being such a great role model for all of us. It is hard to believe that you are no longer with us, but we're comforted knowing that you are not in pain, that you are finally reunited with Savta. We miss you both so much and love you. We ask that you watch over us and be a melitz yosher for all of us. Bila mavet lanetzach u'macha Hashem dima me'al kol panim.
Saba, when I was 4 years old, I got from you a special birthday gift. That cannot be even imagined how much would affect my life. I got a black bag with 2 screwdrivers, 1 pair of pliers, and a hammer. But the biggest and best part of the gift was you, together with all your experience and knowledge that you want to pass over to me. Every day that I work with your tools, it is not only working with the tools, I'm working together with you and learning from all of the projects that these tools did with you. At my bar mitzvah, you got me my tefillin, and you told me that this is in memory of Savta. Every morning when I am wearing the tefillin, I feel that you and Savta are together with me. Every place I go to, every decision I make. Saba, I felt that we had a special and unique relationship, a special connection special communication only for me and you. Saba, I learning from you a lot. I will miss you a lot. Your grandson, Natan.
My name is Zecharia Edinger. I am the Shamash of Congregation Shearith Israel, the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of New York City. I was asked by the Goldfarb family to represent the synagogue today in offering words of eulogy and remembrance for our congregation's honorary shamash and our dear, dear friend, Arnie Goldfarb. Arnie grew up in the synagogue. He was a regular attendee, week in, week out, always attending services no matter the weather, together with his parents and his sister Pearl of blessed memory. Whether it was the history of the congregation or the unique minhagim, beautiful liturgy, or the pageantry of its services, or maybe something about a connection made with the minister, Dr. David DeSole-Poole, something about Shearith Israel connected deeply and strongly with Arnie, and it became a major part of his identity. From a young age, Arnie always wanted to be of help. My grandfather recalled him helping change the cloaks, together with Bernie Turiel and others. My uncle remembers Arnie recruiting him, together with other boys of the congregation, and utilizing a special cart that fit between the pews in order to strive for greater and greater efficiency. Outside of the synagogue, Arnie could be found leading Troop 613 for religiously observant Boy Scouts. And Arnie always found a way that Sabbath and Kashrut observant boys could earn their merit badges, even if that meant that in some years, the overnight camping trip took place in the Ramah's gymnasium. Arnie was an engineer, and this came through in many of the things that he did for the synagogue, whether it was providing technical, audio, or visual support, or recording many of the lectures and events that took place in the synagogue or on the stage of the Levy Auditorium. It also came through in his detailed instructions for the mitzvot of the Torah service, describing to the exact degree the proper angle that the Torah should be held after being undressed and brought to the Tebah, 45 degrees, or when lifting the Torah for Levantar, to make a 30-degree angle with the body and the arm while holding the Torah. He wasn't one to read Zebirot or Haftarot. No, Arnie's strength was in helping out in any and in every way. And so, when it came time for my grandfather, Judah Gedalia, to retire, Arnie was chosen to be his successor. As Shamash, Arnie was dedicated, efficient, and dignified. During services, Arnie ran a tight ship. The mitzvot were assigned well in advance, with ATG often taking Levantar. Arnie would walk the floor of the synagogue with incredible dignity, his head held high, his back straight, whenever he was walking in the sanctuary. Whether it was greeting a visitor or counting the attendance during Musaf on Shabbat. Arnie also ensured there would be no distractions or disturbances during the services, whether that was closing the windows in the summer or sternly shaking his head at congregants trying to leave during Adon Olam. A Shabbat's job is hard, sometimes having to enforce rules or customs that visitors do not understand. Arnie never shirked from this responsibility and always upheld our minhagim and our conventions to the letter. But whenever you met Arnie, whether it was at services or at events, inside or outside the synagogue, Arnie would greet you with a smile, sometimes a little joke. He was always happy to see you. And despite his occasional stern demeanor in the synagogue, Arnie could also get emotional and wasn't too proud to let you see his tears from time to time. The Shamash's job does not end with services. Being Shamash means being available to the community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It means arranging funerals even on your day off, and sometimes even when on vacation. Arnie was always helping out, wherever and whenever it was needed. He helped the youth of the synagogue. And recently I was recalling with my brother the annual baseball game that we took every spring to Yankee Stadium together with Arnie and with the men's club. Arnie helped out the elderly, the needy, in many, many unseen ways. He helped the clergy, the office staff, the building staff. He helped congregants and community members throughout their lives, from birth to death and everything in between. He even produced a calendar every year, which contained a directory of Sephardic congregations throughout the world. Surprisingly useful directory. Arnie was everywhere and in everything. Somehow, even outside of his Shamash duties, Arnie found time to be integrally involved in the men's club, in the league, in the Chebra, in the sisterhood, and so much more. After his retirement, continued to find ways to help the Shearith Israel community. He created and distributed little cards to help congregants keep track of the days between Passover and Shavuot for the Omer. And together with Reverend Solomon Bastias, Arnie helped congregants who wished to be buried in Israel. Until this very day, Arnie is still an officer of the Shearith Israel League Foundation and a member of the Board of Advisors for the Chevra Chassid V'Amen. And even though these roles became mostly honorary in recent years, they were and are a token of the fond feelings and gratitude that our congregation had and still has for Arnie, a gratitude which I hope will never leave us. Arnie was a very proud American and reveled in the unique history of our congregation and its special services for Thanksgiving and Memorial Day. But his love for America never got in the way of being a proud lover of Israel. All of Arnie and Esther's children and grandchildren live today in Israel. After Esther passed, Arnie himself made Aliyah to Israel. But despite being in Jerusalem, one could never take Shearith Israel out of Arnie. Arnie kept on helping out and showing up whenever he could, whether it was an occasional special gathering for Shearith Israel members in Israel, or for special services, maybe perhaps in Istanbul or other places, family celebrations and smachot, and funerals. When I became shamash, Arnie called me up to congratulate me, and he gave me some advice. He told me that I would have to work closely with the executive director and with the building's superintendent, just as he did with Joe Tarika and with Renee and with many others. He told me when was a good time on Kippur to take a break. And he would call me every year after Simchat Torah to commiserate and to congratulate me on completing the busiest time of the year. He also gave me his phone number in Israel and told me that I could call anytime for anything at all. The number was a local number to New York, courtesy of his Magic Jack. But alas, I didn't call him nearly enough. One more example of how Arnie helped me as shamash and helped to upkeep the minhagim of Shearith Israel, even though he was in Israel. A few years ago, an elderly congregant passed away, and when Arnie found out that the burial was going to be at another cemetery, not our own, Arnie called me up and told me that this member was a member of the Chevra and should have hakafot. He told me that if no hakafot were going to be done at the cemetery, that we could and should perform them at the Tahara. And it is with this in mind that I would like to close my remarks today with the first and last passage, the first and last paragraphs of the hakafot. Rachem nagalav el Elohim chayim umelech nolam ki nimecha bekor chayim v'tamid yitalech be'artzot ha'chayim v'tanuach nafsho b'tzror ha'chayim Tehi nafshecha tzurah b'tzror ha'chayim nirashei yeshivot v'rashei galiyot nim Yisraelim v'chohanim uvim v'nim shevan kitot shel tzadikim v'chasidim ugnan ותנוח ותעמוד, ותמיד תתהלך בארצות החיים, ותנוח נפשו בצרור החיים. Thank you, Arnie, for always helping us, our congregation, our community, and me. We will always love you, and we will never, ever forget you. My name is Zecharia Edinger. I am the shepherd.
הבנים יבואו לפה. אנחנו נאמר פרק ט"ז בתהילים. מכתוב לדוד שומרני את כרוסי סיבוך, אומרת לאדוני אדוני אותו תיבוסי בלולכו, לקדושים אשר באורץ עמו אדירי כל חפצי בום, ירבו עצבו ישמח למורו בעל השיח נזכה מדום ועל הסוי שמי סומץ פוסוי, אדוני מנס חלקי וחויסי אותו מרגורו לי, חבלים נפלו לי בנימים אף נחלה שצפו אלוהי, עבורך זדיני אשר יוצון יף לי לא יסיסרו ניחיל יויסוי, שביסי אדוני לא נגדי תמיד כי ממני בעלי מועד, לא חסו מחלבי ויגל גודי הבשרי שקוי לו בטח, כי לא יזהר ואינתו בשולו ספתם חסד כל ירוי שיוחס, לא ידיין זכוי רך, חיים ולא ספורי לפונכו, לאמוי, למלכו בטח.
ותדע ותתקדע שמי רבה. ויאמר תברח תבדי ותדך וחודי ויצבח וחנך יקרב ושמי. היפון וימפון וחיית וכל בית ישראל והרעלה וזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה ורח לעולם לעולם היה. יתברך וישתבח ויתברר ויתשמע וינשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי ותשמע פריחים לעילה ולכל מחתה אשר דת ששבתה ונחמתה דברן ואמר ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה נצביה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ורמה והוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
לפי מנהג ירושלים כל יוצאי חלצה ולא ילכו אחר המיטה. הבנים, הבת, נכדים ונכדות שרוצים להיות לקבורה יכולים ללכת לפני.
Bring me the stick. I didn't realize you don't have a handle on you. It's beneath you.
We have to walk before everybody else.
You need to change the... What? Nothing. What you did it? Nothing. Called them. Let's watch them. Good video, so sometimes I make it here. To see.
הפח נשבר ואנחנו נבטנו. אלינו אלוהינו, עלינו מעשה ידינו כנו, עלינו מעשה ידינו כנהו, לא יישב ושי ישראל יום יצא שדייס לינון, אוי מר לאדינוי מחסים צונוסי לאהב תחבוי, ויתיכוי פח יפף לדבר הבויס, בעברוסו יוסף לך בשר נופות וחסים נופסך למיתוי, לא יסירו מפחד, לא מחצי ופרימו ודבר בויס ולענו בקטע ושות צהרויים, יפועל מתיתכו אלף ורוב ממינכו, אליך לא יגוש רק בעינך תביט בשולמס השם תראה כי אתה אדוני מחסי אליון שמת מו עינךו לא יצרונה אליך רוב ונגע לא יקרב בו עליך אם הלוך על עצה ולוך לשמורך בכל דרוכך על כפיים יסעון חופן תגוי באבן רגלךו, עד נחל ופסן תדרויך תמואס כפיר וסנין, כי בחשק והפנתהו סגביהו כי יודע שמי, יקרו עיני ועיני ומנוחי וצורח על ציו ואחבדהו. אוי רך יומי מסביהו והרבי שעושי, עקביו בן מעללל לא אמר, יסתכל בשלושות דברים אין אותו בו לידי אווירו, דר מאין בוס ולאן אותו ילך ולפנימי אתה עושי דיתן דין לחשבוין, מאין בוס ומתיקון סורכו לאן אותו ילך נמקיים אפורים או וסילאו, ולפני מי אתה עושי דיתן דין לחשבוין, לפני מלך מלכי המלוכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, והוא רחום יכפר רובוין ולא ישחיס, וירבו לו שבעה פוי ולא יאיר כל חמוצוי. יכול להגיד קדיש? אמן. כל בית ישראל והעגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן.
אמן. שמי רבה אמרו אמן. היה איתו. אמן.
יש להם רענו ואין שמיים, לכם תראים עלינו כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
אמן.
שלום אמרו אמן ושלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יושב בספר עליון, תודה תודה.
February 16th. What about אני רוצה כבר פתאום תגביהו כי יודע שמי יתרואני ועיני מלכים וצורח על ציו ואחבדהו אוי רך ימים מסביהו והרבי שעושי יהי שם בסייסר אלוהים אתן שדי פרינון אוי מר לאדוני מרשים תרופי אלוהי תח בוי כי הוא יצאו תלויים תחי קושמי לרבויס ועברוסו יוסך לך בסחת כנופוב תחסי צינו וסרחה מיצוי לא יסתירות מתחדו ומחצי יזמימום כדי מבית עליה לא חשבת לשביט קרובים כל מיצוי פרלף ובבום ומלכו לך לא יגעת מהגעים בכל דרך לכו על כפיים יצרים חפק בגלל באבן רגלךו המשך על ופסת תדרוך תלמסקו בשנים כי וחשק בהפלתר וסגב כי יודע שמי יקראיני ועיני מלכי וצורח על ציו ואחבדהו אוי רך ימי ובאל הרבי שעושי עקביו בן מעללל לא אמר להסתכל בשלושות דברים אין אתה בו לידי אווירו דע מאין בוס אותן אתה ילך לפנימי אתה עשית דיתן דין לחשבוין מאין בוס ומתיפוס ובכל לאן אתה ילך למקום אפורים ובסלאו ולפני מי אתה עשית דיתן דין לחשבוין לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא והוא רחום יכפר רובוין ולא ישחיס וירבו לו שבעה פוי ולא יאיר כל חמוצוי אביב, בוא לפה. בוא לפה. לא יעזור. זה לבוס לפה יד. עושה סיבוב. עוד קפוץ על זה. אהרון בן בן, כי מלאכו, יצא ולוך לשמור לך בכל דרכיך. רחום יחפר רבוין אליה השחיז בלבולה שיפוי ולא יהיה כל חמוסוי. רחום יחפר רבוין אליה השחיז בלבולה שיפוי ולא יהיה כל חמוסוי. רחום יחפר רבוין אליה השחיז בלבולה שיפוי ולא יהיה כל חמוסוי. לא לדרוך על האדמה, לא לחשוב אותה. קח אותה עמוק ותדרוך ממנו. הבנים.
פה. פה מאחורינו.
פרק ט"ז בתהילים. ויכתוב לדוד שומרני אל תירוסי סיבוך. אומרת אדוני אדוני יודו תיבוסי בלולכו. תקדשים אשר באורץ עמו ואדירי כל חפץ ציבום. עיר בו עצבו ישמח עמו ובלסך מסכם עידום ובלסך בו ישמח עצבוסוי. אדוני מנס חלקי בכל קייתו תמיד גורו לי. תבוא לי נופלו לי בנינים אף נחלה שופרו אלוהי. עבורי זיינה אשר יוצון יפלילוי תסרוני חיליוי סוי. שיבי שערי נוילינג מתומית כמימנים בלמוי. לא כן צונח לבילה כפתיה בסוריש פלו בטח. לא יצעד ואינן שיבי שלו סיתן חסיסכו לרוי שוחס. לא יתייני אוי רך חיים טוב אספחוי לצפונכו. נעימוי לנכו נצח.
יקדש ברבה. יעמד ימרת ירותי, ימליך בחותי, ויצמח בחני, ויקרב בשכי. בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יתברך וישתבח ויקרא ויתאמר וינשא ויתודה ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי תפתח וירחו ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבתה ונחלתה ותמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה ונשביה וחיים טובים עליהם ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עשה שלום וגמר יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
אהרון בן דוד, בשם החברה הקדישה, בשם המשפחה, הקרובים, הידידים והמלווים, אנו מבקשים ממך סליחה ומחילה. שם אחת וחלילה פגענו בכבודך, הן בטהרה, בנשיאת המיטה ובתיקון הקבר. אנא סלח לנו כי אין זו אלא שגגה. החברה קדישה נהגה איתך כמנהגי ירושלים עיר הקודש. יהיינה מליץ יושר עבור משפחתך, קרוביך וידידיך, ועבור כל כלל ישראל בכל תפוצות ישראל. וייתן השם ויבולה מוות לנצח, ומחה השם אלוקים דמעה על כל פנים, ובא לציון גואל במהרה בימינו אמן. לך בשלום, שנוח בשלום, ותעמוד לגורלך לקצר. נצא מחוץ לחלקה באזור הכביש, נעשה שני שורות דברים ונחום אבנים לבנים. יחבת מנחמים בלי שורה. יוסי תוריד את הפרוז'קטור? כן.
go.
If anybody can say tomorrow if we're doing ours, I think.